Hi everyone, I'm Ezra. Let me introduce you to Edie. Edie is my ex-girlfriend. I used to be in love with her, but unfortunately she let me down. Let me tell you the whole story from the beginning. I started going to my current school last year. Edie was on the swimming team. The first time I saw her was at an inter-school swimming competition. She was the most beautiful girl on the team. That was the day I found myself falling head over heels for her. Every morning when I woke up, I was telling myself, I will see Edie again today. I was spending a long time getting ready in front of the mirror. Earlier, I didn't care much about my clothes, but now I was thinking long and hard about what to wear each day. Even though my family is middle class, I have a lot of clothes to choose from. I owe this to my dad's wonderful boss. My dad is a personal driver. His boss, Mr. Kitt, had a son who was 2 years older than me. He loved extreme sports. Unfortunately, he had a terrible accident while rock climbing and passed away. Mr. Kitt had lost his wife a few years earlier. After losing his only son, in addition to his wife, he became very depressed. At that time, Mr. Kitt used to invite me to his house quite often. We used to have these long chats. After he overcame his depression, he said, "Ezra, the way you think reminds me so much of my son. I feel as if I'm talking to him. It feels really good to spend time with you. I want to give you a scholarship for your education. After you finish college, you can work for my company." I was really happy to hear this. Mr. Kitt went on, saying, "I only have one favor to ask of you. Can I send my son's clothes over to your house? I'm going to ask you to wear his clothes when you come to see me. I'd be very happy if you could do that for me." I gladly accepted. That's why I have a lot of clothes. I used to only care about what I was wearing when I was going over to Mr. Kitt's house. But now, every morning, I was getting ready for my crush, Edie. My dad would drop me off at school in the mornings. Then he would pick up Mr. Kitt and take him to his office. When my dad noticed I was dressing differently, he started to make fun of me. He'd say, "Son, you look like you own this car now. Don't be surprised if I start calling you Mr. Ezra." I would say, "Dad, please don't tease me." And he'd say, "I'm not kidding. You really do look cool in these clothes." Although I left home every day thinking, I will introduce myself to Edie today, I couldn't bring myself to do it, and I was starting to lose hope. Finally, my chance came when I was least expecting it. I was eating lunch at the cafeteria. Someone came to my table and asked, "Is this seat taken?" When I looked up, it was Edie. She took me by surprise and I said, "No, it's totally not taken." Edie sat down smiling. She held out her hand and said, "I'm Edie." I wanted to say, "I know, and I love you and your name too." But of course, I couldn't. I held out my hand and said, "I'm Ezra." I couldn't take my eyes off of Edie during lunch. She was even prettier up close. I was extremely happy now that she was aware of my existence. The next day at lunch, I looked for Edie, but I couldn't find her. Just as I was leaving the cafeteria to go to class, I heard her voice, "Ezra." When I turned to look, she was standing right in front of me. Before I could say anything, she said, "I just got back from swimming practice. Come, let's do a TikTok." I didn't know Edie had a TikTok account. We shot something stupid and uploaded it to both our accounts. Of course, we started following each other too. That night, we texted for hours. When I went to bed, I had to pinch myself really hard because I was so afraid this would turn out to be a dream. If it could hurt this much, I was most definitely not dreaming. I fell asleep, smiling from happiness. In the morning, my dad dropped me off at school again. Just then, I ran into Edie. I used to walk around the whole school just to catch a glimpse of her, but now she started appearing right in front of me. We walked to the school, chatting. Actually, it was her who was doing the talking because I was so nervous that I couldn't think of anything to say. Edie and I started meeting during every single break. But I couldn't even imagine that a girl like her could even remotely like someone like me. That's why I kept thinking that she only saw me as a friend. As she told me later, she had actually been waiting for me to ask her out. When she realized that I wasn't going to do it, she decided to do it herself. Of course, that hadn't occurred to me back then. So I was really surprised when one Saturday night she texted me, "Do you want to hang out tonight?" We met at a coffee shop near her house. By the end of the day, we were boyfriend and girlfriend. I was so happy I couldn't sleep that night. I'm not someone who likes to go out in the evenings. As long as I'm in school, I prefer to focus on my studies. It seemed like Edie was my total opposite. On Thursday, she texted me about a restaurant. She wrote, "Want to go to this place for dinner tomorrow? I hear it's very good." I didn't like the idea, but this was a girl that I was in love with. I had to say yes. But there was a problem. The restaurant looked super fancy. I figured it was probably expensive. When I looked at the menu online, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was a lot more expensive than I thought. I would have to save up my allowance for a year to be able to afford a place like that. Edie didn't really show it, but it seemed that her family was very rich and they were used to going to places like this. The next day at school, Edie asked, "So, what do you think of the restaurant?" I follow that place on Instagram. It's a celebrity hangout. I said sheepishly, "I don't feel comfortable in such places. Can't we just go to that coffee shop near you?" Edie was disappointed. "For real? But I really want to go to this place. I've never been to such a chic restaurant. Don't I deserve to go to such places?" she said, staring at me. I was confused. Edie was saying that normally she wouldn't be able to go to such a place. But at the same time, she thought that I could afford to take her there. So I said, "Babe, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I think eating at such a fancy restaurant would probably cost as much as my dad makes in a month. There's no way I can afford that." Edie got really mad and yelled, "Ezra, your family is so rich. Why are you lying to me?" When I said, "What makes you think that?" she said, "Because you have a driver that drops you off at school every day. Because your car is worth a fortune. Because you only wear designer clothes. You think I can't tell that your family's really well off?" I said, "My dad works as a driver. The car you saw belongs to his boss. The clothes I'm wearing used to belong to the boss's son. It's actually a really sad story. I'll tell you about it sometime." Edie began crying and suddenly screamed, "You lied to me." When I said, "Babe, you got it all wrong," she said, "Don't call me babe," and ran away. At that moment, everything became clear to me. Edie had been thinking I was rich. She became my girlfriend because she thought she could live her dream life with me. I felt really humiliated. The love of my life was a gold digger, and she didn't even feel the need to hide it. For a few days, I was devastated. I was thinking about Edie every waking moment. But then I figured that this wasn't the right way to go about things. Instead of being sad, I had to draw some lessons. I only fell in love with Edie because she was beautiful. But as I learned, looks could be deceiving. I felt better when I began to think this way. The heartbreak that kept me up at night went away pretty soon. One day my dad said, "My boss is inviting us to his house. He said he had something important to tell us." We went there that evening. Mr. Kitt is a wonderful person. We were having a fantastic time as we always do. Then a man came into the room. Mr. Kitt said, "Let me introduce you to my attorney, Mr. Turner. He's with us today for a very important matter." The attorney took out a document and began reading. We couldn't believe our ears. My mom couldn't keep herself from crying. The document was Mr. Kitt's will. Because he didn't have any other relatives, he had decided to leave half of his fortune to charity and the remaining half to me. I became incredibly rich overnight. Mr. Kitt said, "This is the best decision I made in my life. Yes, I lost my son, but now I have an honorary son," and gave me a hug. I was going to receive the inheritance in the future, but Mr. Kitt wanted us to have better lives right away. We moved into his house. I started going to a private school. Now I was really living the life Edie was dreaming about. She had no idea about any of this because we had stopped talking. One day, Mr. Kitt called me into his office. He said, "My company sponsored a competition. I'm supposed to present the medals to the winners, but I'm sure they're all young people like yourself. Would you like to go on my behalf?" I was really excited. Half an hour later, my dad and I were at the venue. You guessed it, right? It was a swimming competition, and Edie was most probably there. The award ceremony had begun as I entered the hall. The presenter said, "Our sponsor is going to present the medals to the winners." I quickly walked towards them. Right next to the presenter was the podium with the top 3 finishers. When I saw that Edie was one of them, my knees started to shake. It turned out she got second place. She was clearly surprised to see me. First, I presented the gold medal to the winner. Then I stood in front of Edie. I smiled as I hung the silver medal around her neck. "Congratulations," I said. Edie didn't say anything because she was completely stunned. That night, I got the message I'd been waiting for. "Hey, what's up?" I didn't write back because I didn't know how to respond. After a while, Edie wrote, "I always knew you were lying to me." That made me upset. I replied, "I never told you a single lie in my life. I really wasn't rich back when we were dating, but then something surprising happened." Edie wrote back, "I don't understand any of this, but I don't want to make a big deal out of it. I missed you so much. I'm sure you missed me too." Of course, I didn't reply. She must have gotten the message because she never tried to get in touch with me after that. Thanks for listening to me. If you liked my story, please don't forget to like the video. See you!